Reserve.
Gentleman from Washington reserves. The gentleman from Mississippi is recognized.
I now yield 2 minutes to Representative Moore of Alabama.
The gentleman is recognized.
I thank the gentleman from Mississippi. Mr. Speaker, what we have seen happen to Alabama's own Vulcan Materials Company should concern every member of this body. A foreign government shut down an American company's operations, moved to seize its property, and ignored the rule of law. If it can happen to one American company, it can happen to any of them. We must protect American jobs and American investments and stand on the principles that the United States will stand for its people and its companies wherever they operate. The government of Mexico's actions, shutting down operations, exploiting a deep water port and quarry, and hiding behind environmental designations, set a dangerous precedent that weakens trade relationships and threatens our national security. The Defending American Property Abroad Act of 2026 makes it clear, if you target American businesses, there will be consequences. It strengthens our trade enforcement rules, expands Section 301 authority, and allows the United States to take real action against those who seize or interfere with American property. We will not allow foreign governments to benefit from the access of our markets while violating the rights of American companies. I urge my colleagues to stand with the American workers, stand with the rule of law, and support this bill, and with that, I'll yield back.
The gentleman yields back. Does the gentleman reserve?
I reserve.
The gentleman reserves. The gentleman from Washington is recognized.
Thank you. I'd like to yield 3 minutes to the representative from Illinois, Representative Garcia.
The gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I rise today to voice my strong opposition to this bill. First of all, this bill and the substance of the bill, this dispute, is undergoing consideration by the international bodies established by the U.S.-Mexico-Canada Trade Agreement. We really should wait until a decision is arrived at with respect to that mechanism. But there are other considerations. First, let's consider other far-reaching implications. The bill gives the President the authority to prohibit vessels that travel through certain Western Hemisphere ports that he designates from entering U.S. waters. While supporters say that the bill is narrowly written to target a specific project in a specific country, the reality is that the President will be given broad authority that could be applied to other countries in the future. And let's not forget who we're talking about here. This is the same President who used military force in Venezuela to force regime change. The same President who's now engaging in an illegal war with Iran without even consulting Congress. Do we really want to entrust the President with this new authority granted under this bill? Equally damaging, the bill ignores the objections of local people fighting for their right to safe drinking water and a surrounding environment free of contamination. That's what's in the dispute resolution matter being addressed now. I've spoken to local community leaders who have suffered from the environmental damage caused by these mining operations. This bill limits the ability of foreign governments to adopt measures that protect its communities and its environment, essentially coercing those foreign governments to prioritize the interests of U.S. corporations over its people. We should not be legislating to hinder a foreign government's ability to protect its citizens from environmental harm. We should not be granting the President a new authority that could have broad foreign policy implications. I urge my colleagues to join with me and to vote no on this proposal. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I yield back.
The chair yields back. Does the gentleman reserve?
Reserve.
The gentleman from Mississippi is recognized.
I now yield 2 minutes to Representative McGuire of Virginia.
The gentleman is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I rise in support of H.R. 7084, the Defending American Prosperity Abroad Act of 2026. I'm a proud co-sponsor of this vital piece of legislation, and I thank my colleague, Chairman Pfluger from Texas, for his leadership on this matter. In 2022, the Mexican government unlawfully took over and shut down a limestone quarry in Mexico operated by a U.S.-based company. This seizure violated the U.S.-Mexico-Canada agreement, undermined American property values, and threatened U.S. economic growth and national security. It is of the utmost importance that we protect American businesses and vessels from being unfairly targeted or having their assets unlawfully seized while operating around the world. I am proud to support H.R. 7084, which ensures that there are real consequences when American property is seized abroad. I urge all my colleagues to vote in favor of this bill and show the world that Americans stand firmly behind its workers, businesses, and investments at home and abroad. And I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman yields back. The gentleman reserves.
I reserve.
All right. The gentleman from Washington is recognized.
Thank you. I'd like to yield 2 minutes to Representative from Alabama, Representative Figures.
The gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today in support of the Defending American Property Abroad Act because it is the right thing to do. We've talked about here today about this being a U.S.-based company. Well, it's a little bit more personal than that to me and my colleague, Congresswoman Sewell, and a few of my other colleagues from the state of Alabama. This is an Alabama-based company, and it is the right thing to do because when you have a company that is operating on lawfully acquired land nearly 4 decades ago, performing lawful operations, paying taxes lawfully, exporting the goods lawfully, many of which that come through my hometown, the Port of Mobile, which is now the deepest port in the Gulf. When they're doing this lawfully, they should be treated lawfully. And what we have here is not really complicated. It's not complex in terms of what the Mexican government did here. They came in and just took it and said, we're not abiding by a process, we're not abiding by any contractual terms or any other terms, we're just taking it, and by the way, we're not going to pay you for it. And when a foreign entity uses the full force of its military and its government to take away property rights from a Alabama-based company, I'm going to stand up for that. But we also have an obligation to make sure we're using the full force of our government in response to it. And that is what this legislation does, and I urge my colleagues to support it for that reason. But not only that, because we're here because it's an Alabama company today, but tomorrow it could be a Mississippi company or a Washington company or Oregon, or Indiana, Illinois, any other state. We cannot sit by quietly and not respond proportionally to what the Mexican government has done. I don't have anything personally against the Mexican government. I don't have anything certainly against the Mexican people. But what I do have a problem with is when we see a government mistreating, even our own government, mistreating businesses and mistreating people. We have an obligation to speak out and to stand up for that, and for that reason, I stand in support of this legislation and urge all of my colleagues to do the same. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield back.
The gentleman yields back.
Reserve.
The gentleman reserves. The gentleman from Mississippi is recognized.
I now yield 2 minutes to Representative Strong of Alabama.
The gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The question is, do we support President Trump with this authority? Absolutely we do. I rise today in support of H.R. 7084, the Defending America Property Abroad Act of 2026. This legislation makes it clear the United States will not stand for unlawful harassment campaigns against American companies and American workers. For over 35 years, Vulcan Material Company, based in Alabama, has lawfully owned and operated a limestone quarry in Mexico. Yet, since 2018, the Mexican government has unlawfully restricted Vulcan's operation and wrongly targeted them through coercion and intimidation. In 2022, the Mexican president attempted to seize the property when Vulcan refused to surrender Mexican retaliation by issuing stand-down orders. No American company should be pressured into accepting a fire sale takeover or punished for standing up for its lawful rights. Vulcan followed the law, held up its end of the deal, and operated transparently. What they received in return was their property stolen and seized by the Mexican government. These actions have essentially left the only deepwater port on the Yucatan Peninsula, owned, constructed, and operated for years by Vulcan, and the surrounding land open for sale to our adversaries. Unbelievable. The Defending American Property Abroad Act gives the United States the tools to push back against foreign countries and trading partners when our companies are unlawfully targeted and harassed. America owes Mexico nothing. This is about fairness and accountability. The United States will no longer sit by and allow foreign nations to profit from stolen American property. I urge my colleagues to support H.R. 7084, and I thank my friends. I want to thank also Congressman Pfluger for his leadership in advancing this important legislation. I yield back.
The gentleman yields back. The gentleman reserves.
I reserve.
The gentleman reserves. The gentleman from Washington is recognized.
Thank you. I'd like to yield 2 minutes to the representative from Alabama, Representative Sewell.
The gentlelady is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today in support of the Defending American Property Abroad Act. This narrowly tailored bill will target vessels that attempt to enter into the U.S. after moving through a seized American-owned port. Vulcan Material is proudly located in my Alabama district, so I've been following this dispute closely since 2018. The facts of the case are clear. The government of Mexico used its military force to illegally occupy Vulcan's property. And in 2022, President Obrador illegally shut down Vulcan's operations. Mexico's justification for the seizure are fabricated, and it is clear that the government wants to take Vulcan's port because it is the only deep water port in the region. Now, Mr. Speaker, Vulcan has attempted to use all existing legal and diplomatic options to resolve this situation. Since 2018, they have used the USMCA arbitration policies and processes, and multiple U.S. ambassadors to Mexico under the Biden and Trump administration have attempted to find an amicable solution. I have met directly with President Obrador about this issue. While previous ambassadors have been sympathetic to our concerns, President Obrador and now President Xi have overruled their own diplomatic and staff orders. It is time for Congress to act. I was told by the President that we had to have an act of Congress in order for the port to be returned. And so today, sir, I say proudly, we are doing something. Congress is doing something. And this is just not about an Alabama company. It is about American property abroad.
Time has expired.
I urge Congress to vote in favor of this bill, and I support this legislation wholeheartedly. I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentlelady's time has expired. Does the gentleman reserve?
Reserve.
All right. The gentleman from Mississippi is recognized.
I now yield 3 minutes to Representative Palmer of Alabama.
The gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today in strong support of H.R. 7084, the Defending American Property Abroad Act of 2026. This legislation codifies the common sense principle that foreign nations should not profit from property stolen from Americans. This bill is needed for years because for years the Mexican government has engaged in a deliberate campaign against an American company, Vulcan Materials, headquartered in my district. In 2022, Mexican authorities used military force to shut down Vulcan's lawful operations. Then in 2024, they took the dramatic step of declaring Vulcan's private property a protected natural area. The move was not designed to conserve land, but to justify taking it. But this is about more than one company. Mexico's actions sent a dangerous signal to every American business operating abroad that their investments, their assets, their rights could be stripped away at any moment by the corrupt Mexican government. When I and other members of the Alabama delegation, in a bipartisan manner, met with the ambassador from Mexico, he described his government's actions as a civil dispute. I pointed out to the ambassador that in America, we don't send in our military to resolve civil disputes. The port at the center of the dispute is not just any asset. As it's been pointed out by other speakers, it's the only deep water port on the Yucatan Peninsula built by American investments, critical to supplying construction materials for infrastructure across the United States. Mexico's actions undermine not only property rights, but also our supply chain. The illegal action is more like an action by a cartel than it is a trustworthy government, and it raises serious questions about entering into any agreements with Mexico. The Defending American Property Abroad Act ensures that government Foreign governments cannot seize American-owned infrastructure and then benefit from the infrastructure. It authorizes the United States to deny entry to vessels operating out of or that have visited ports unlawfully expropriated from American companies. Mr. Speaker, this is about protecting American businesses and fundamentally the rule of law. If we fail to act here, then we invite more of this behavior, not just from Mexico, but from any nation watching to see how the United States responds. I thank Representative Pfluger for his work on this important issue, and I urge my colleagues to vote yes on H.R. 7084. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield.
The gentleman yields back. The gentleman reserves. The gentleman from...
Mr. Speaker, I have no more speakers, and I have prepared to close, but I continue to reserve.
The gentleman reserves. The gentleman from Washington is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We also have no more speakers and are prepared to close. And given what the representative has noted, I'll close right now. Again, I'll just reiterate the bill before us today does not resolve this dispute between the Mexican government and an American company. There are tools available and continue to be available to resolve that. It gives the Coast Guard more work on top of all the work our U.S. Coast Guard is already doing. I had an amendment to the Rules Committee. They rejected an amendment that would have required the President to consider the potential cost before exercising the authorities granted in this bill, and that Rules Committee amendment was rejected. Arbitration, treaties, trade agreements, these mechanisms exist to solve international disputes. These are appropriate venues for this dispute and not legislation. For those reasons, I will be voting no. Now, in conclusion, I do want to note something that these bills and the 13 to 14 bills that came before this body earlier this week from the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee, those were on suspension. This one was not. But it needs to be said that the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee works extremely well. We see ourselves as a island of partnership in a sea of partisanship in the U.S. Congress. And even though this bill may not fit that bill, the committee works that way because of one person. And that one person is Representative Sam Graves. And this morning it was announced that Sam will not be running for re-election. And I think I wanted to take this brief moment as part of my time in closing to just note that we are going to be losing a fierce advocate for infrastructure investment and for transportation safety with his announcement that he will not run again. Sam and I have served together nearly 26 years. We came in together. In recent years, we've developed a partnership that overrode the partisanship in Congress. This body has dealt with the Federal Aviation Administration reauthorization, a Coast Guard reauthorization, a Water Resources Development Act reauthorization. We've passed a FEMA Act that reforms FEMA. We have yet to get that to the floor, and we certainly want to see that get to the floor. A lot of other things. Importantly, we are working right now on a bill to reauthorize the surface transportation authorizations. Think roads, bridges, highways, transit, rail, and some other things. We're working on that right now. And that work continues to progress, all because of the work of Representative Sam Graves. So although the House is losing Sam, a home is regaining him back in Turkey, Missouri at some point at the end of this year. His family is getting them back. I've always said that Sam likes three things in life: his grandkids, vintage aircraft, and Congress, and in that order. And so I want to thank Sam Graves for his friendship and his partnership and helping us to continue to do the work of this committee to bring bills to the floor that we can debate in a manner that's respectful of the body that we all get to serve in. And with that, I yield the balance of my time.
The gentleman yields back. The gentleman is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I yield myself as much time as I may consume.
The gentleman is recognized.
In closing, passage of H.R. 7084 gives the President authority to effectively address the illegal taking of a United States citizen-owned port, harbor, or marine terminal throughout the Western Hemisphere. American companies are the source of more investments in the Western Hemisphere nations than investors from around the country. Infrastructure projects in Americas, especially port infrastructure projects, represent significant potential business opportunities for American companies. Protecting overseas U.S. investments is an important policy objective. This bill creates an appropriate cost and consequence for stealing property from an American-owned business. The Defending American Property Abroad Act of 2026 is consistent with other authorities Congress has given the President to act against the illegal taking of American business and investments. Mr. Speaker, I'm a former sheriff from Mississippi, and where I come from, when you take something that doesn't belong to you, that's stealing and you've broken the law. If you break the law, there are consequences. This bill ensures there are consequences for foreign countries that steal from our companies. Simply put, this legislation is common sense. Mr. Speaker, I urge support of this bill, and I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman yields back. All time for debate has expired. Pursuant to House Resolution 1131, the previous question is ordered on the bill as amended. The question is on engrossment and third reading of the bill. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. Third reading.
Union Calendar number 484, H.R. 7084, a bill to amend Title 46, United States Code, with respect to the types of vessels that may enter or operate in navigable waters of the United States or transfer cargo in any port or place under the jurisdiction of the United States and for other purposes.
The question is on passage of the bill. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. The ayes have it. The bill is passed.
Speaker, I ask for yeas and nays.
The gentleman wants the yeas and nays. The yeas and nays are requested. Those favoring a vote by the yeas and nays will rise. A sufficient number having risen, the yeas and nays order, members will record their votes by electronic device. This is a 15-minute vote. On this vote, the yeas are 247 and the nays are 164. The bill is passed without objection.